Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, licensed clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 41. High performers believe leadership is about showing up strong, steady, and unshaken, even when they're running on fumes. They think the job is to carry the weight, solve the problems, and be the person everyone else leans on. The truth is, leading while drained has a hidden cost. The more you absorb from everyone around you, the more your bandwidth shrinks. And high achievers often don't realize they're declining until they're already deep into burnout. That internal overload shows up in subtle ways. When you keep saying yes because people expect you to, when you're pouring into others while quietly running empty, or when you can't step back because you're afraid something will fall apart without you. It can even hide inside your drive, over preparing, over controlling, or hyper responsibility disguised as leadership. But peak performance requires capacity. And when you lead from depletion, you don't lose skill, you lose access to it. Today's episode breaks down the hidden toll leaders take on when they're drained, why high performers struggle to admit they're overwhelmed, what actually happens to your cognitive and emotional systems when you carry too much, and how to lead effectively even on your low energy days because they're going to happen. You'll learn how to rebuild capacity, protect your mental bandwidth, and reset your nervous system and get back to your optimal zone without stepping away from your responsibilities. Quick note before we dive in, this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If there is something you need, make sure you go and get it. You can watch full episodes on YouTube and Spotify, and the audio-only version on Apple Podcasts as well. We have clips and highlights being shared across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube, and all the links are in the show notes to those social media accounts to get involved with those communities as we continue to build them. If you've ever felt like you're leading on empty, caring too much, or trying to perform at a high level when you're far from your best, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. The hidden cost of being the strong one. Leaders burn out by being everyone's emotional anchor, and that responsibility silently drains decision-making, creativity, and resilience. Leaders who act as the primary emotional support for their teams often neglect their own emotional well-being, leading to empathy burnout and compassion fatigue. This constant emotional burden and the resulting mental strain negatively affect high-level cognitive functions required for effective leadership, such as making sound decisions and fostering creativity. Operating at such an intense emotional capacity is unsustainable and a lurking reality for many leaders. True leadership requires creating a system where support is distributed and leaders know when to let go and recharge rather than becoming a prisoner of their own strength, which honestly happens all of the time. There's a lot of people that reach high positions or high levels or even points of leadership because of their strengths. They do really well at what they're good at, and then those things catapult them into these arenas. The issue is, once we're in those arenas, the game has changed now. And those things that might have got you there might actually be a cage keeping you stuck and not helping the team you're working with. A perfect example of that is Mark's story. And of course, all names are changed for confidentiality. We take privacy and confidentiality very seriously, so nothing will ever be revealed. But we'll dive into it because I do think it will be helpful for a lot of you guys to hear how a real world example can apply to this. Mark was the kind of leader people gravitated towards. Calm, collected, and always available. He managed the high-stakes product development team, and to his team, Mark was their rock, their strong one. When the lead engineer was blindsided by a difficult divorce and needed an empathetic ear and scheduling flexibility, Mark was there, assuring her everything would be okay and taking some of the project load on himself. When a major client threatened to walk and the sales director had a complete meltdown in the hallway, Mark was there. He calmly walked them to a quiet room, listened patiently, and absorbed that wave of panic, reassuring him they would find a solution. When the junior designer's child was hospitalized, Mark was there. He was the one who convinced him to go home and be with his family, all while silently absorbing the added stress of covering the looming deadlines. From the outside, the team was functioning. Projects were getting done. Mark was leading calmly and with presence. But he was carrying everyone else's stress while meticulously hiding his own. He suppressed his own frustrations, concerns, and exhaustion because he felt he couldn't show weakness. He had to be the immovable anchor for the fragile ship. cost was invisible at first. Mark started feeling a creeping numbness. He'd finish meetings and not remember key details. He was present physically, but felt detached internally. He attributed it to just being overworked, due to working late into the evenings and the weekends, like we all have done at times. But the feeling wasn't just physical fatigue, it was emotional exhaustion. The very essence of his leadership, the vision, the inspiration, and the ability to motivate others, began to erode. That silent drain on his cognitive resources eventually impacted his work. He started making reactive decisions rather than thoughtful strategic ones, leading to a critical error in a pricing model that nearly cost them their next round of funding. By the time anyone noticed something was truly wrong, Mark had hit a wall. His resilience had been completely depleted, and he found himself in a deep fog of classic workplace burnout, and the company started to spiral. Mark's story is a stark reminder that empathy needs boundaries. He wasn't leading effectively by drowning in everyone's emotions. He was merely self-sacrificing. True leadership, he later realized after stepping back, involves not only supporting the team, but also creating a culture where support is mutual and the strong one has permission to be human, which means to rest and to recover. And this brings us to leadership load versus leadership capacity. Most leaders lead beyond their emotional and mental capacity without realizing it. The core challenge for many executives is the disparity between their leadership load, which is the total demands placed upon them, and their actual leadership capacity, their mental and emotional ability to handle that load sustainably. Most leaders lead beyond their capacity without realizing it, often until burnout occurs. The load of leadership is not just a list of tasks and deadlines. It is heavily weighted by unseen emotional demands, such as the invisible load. This includes the pressure of being consistently empathetic, managing conflict, being constantly available, making high-stakes decisions, and carrying the team's collective stress. These demands accumulate quietly, often going unacknowledged until symptoms surface. We also have the capacity gap. Capacity refers to a leader's available psychological and social resources. When the load exceeds capacity for an extended period, a gap emerges. Many leaders push through this gap using sheer willpower, reinforcing a culture of overwork and masking the problem. Operating beyond capacity has significant negative impacts on the leader and the organization. There are consequences of overextension, such as emotional depletion, which narrows a leader's focus, pushing them into reactive decision making rather than thoughtful strategic planning, like we talked about in Mark's story. An overextended leader may also display irritability, a lack of empathy, or poor listening skills, creating a toxic environment where employees feel undervalued or disengaged. When leaders don't model healthy boundaries and self care, they inadvertently signal to their teams that constant availability is the standard for success, perpetuating a cycle of chronic stress. But there are strategies for sustainable leadership. To lead effectively and avoid burnout, leaders must engage in conscious regenerative leadership practices that acknowledge capacity limits. One way we can do that is self care. And we can go pretty deep in self care, but beyond exercise and sleep. This can involve dedicated time for mental and emotional rebalancing through practices like mindfulness, reflection, or just unplugging entirely from devices for set periods of time. Leaders also need to define and enforce boundaries between work and personal life, and this is incredibly hard. Modeling these boundaries provide implicit permission for their teams to do the same, fostering a healthier culture. As a leader, you lead by example, and the way you're doing things is going to impact how your team is doing things. We also have to delegate tasks to competent team members, as that not only frees up the leader's bandwidth, but it also empowers employees and builds team capacity. And it's scary to delegate, but it is worth it in the long run. Seeking help is not weakness. This is another aspect that we have to incorporate in the culture that we're building. Leaders should have a network of peers, mentors, or coaches to discuss challenges and gain perspective in a confidential space. This is the work we do here at Premier Performance, and this is why we see so many high performers, because it is very difficult to be open and vulnerable out of that fear of judgment and what everyone else is going to think and trying to be strong all the time. Ultimately, we want to create a workplace where team members feel safe to express emotions and ask for help. This ensures that the pressure is a shared effort, not a burden the leader carries alone. By managing their capacity proactively, leaders and high achievers can ensure their performance is not just competent, but sustainable, allowing them to lead with clarity and humanity for a long period of time. Now let's dive into the psychology of carrying what's not yours. High achievers often take on others' stress, emotions, and mistakes, and there is a toll that invisible emotional labor takes on performance. High achievers often struggle with the invisible emotional labor of carrying others' stresses. This burden is often rooted in deep-seated psychological patterns like an overdeveloped sense of responsibility and a fear of letting others down. High achievers frequently take responsibility to a fault, feeling excessive guilt when things go wrong, even if the issues are outside of their control entirely. This stems from a genuine desire to help. It's not built in a bad place, but it can spiral into a cycle of self-neglect and emotional exhaustion. Many high performers strive for perfection and view any sign of vulnerability, including emotional vulnerability or needing help, as a personal failing or weakness. This mindset prevents them from setting boundaries or admitting when they are struggling. High achievers are often praised for their competence and ability to handle pressure, which reinforces the behavior of taking on more. The external praise can make it difficult for them to stop, as they feel others depend on them to always show up and keep calm. The continuous effort to manage and regulate one's emotions to meet external expectations, known as surface acting, can lead to inner tension and a compromised sense of self-worth. This emotional dissonance is exhausting and contributes significantly to burnout. Now let's talk about the toll on performance and well-being. Constantly managing multiple demands and emotional situations depletes mental and emotional resources, leading to chronic stress and burnout that often goes unnoticed until it's severe. Emotional drain impairs high-level cognitive functions. As the brain prioritizes goal-directed thinking over emotional processing, this can lead to emotional numbness and difficulty identifying needs, which means you're not going to operate at the highest level because you don't know what your body is telling you. Hiding struggles and internalizing stress makes it hard to form genuine connections and fosters a sense of isolation, which further worsens mental health. Prioritizing others' needs over their own means less time for self-care activities like hobbies, exercise, or rest, which are essential for maintaining emotional resilience. So we have to shift the paradigm. Managing this challenge requires a shift in perspective and behavior. The first step is acknowledging that this invisible emotional work is real, demanding, and valuable. We also have to learn to say no and set clear boundaries, as this is an act of self-preservation, not selfishness. We need to hold boundaries so we can keep doing the things that we want to do. And we have to create a work environment where support is distributed and mutual rather than relying on a single strong one. This helps prevent one person from shouldering the entire burden, and this is a very common thing for high achievers because we feel like we can't get help from others because we're too busy being the help for everyone else. High achievers often benefit from cultivating self-compassion. This allows for faster recovery from setbacks and adaptation under pressure rather than wasting energy on shame and blame. When competence becomes a trap, high performers get drained because they're the most capable one in the room. And what happens when "I'll just do it myself" becomes self-sabotage? When an individual is recognized as the most capable person in the room, their competence often can become a trap. High performers frequently find themselves drained and overwhelmed precisely because they are so capable. This is part of the unique challenge that this presents for high achievers. The competence trap is a cycle where an individual's ability to handle tasks efficiently leads to them being assigned more work, which then reduces their available time and energy. This positive feedback loop reinforces dependence from others and self-reliance on the high performer, eventually leading to exhaustion and self-sabotage. This dynamic arises due to several factors, the first being the path of least resistance. For managers and team members, it is easier and faster to rely on the person who consistently delivers high-quality results. Another aspect is internal drivers. High achievers often possess internal drivers like perfectionism, a strong sense of duty, or a need for control, which compel them to take on challenges and refuse help. High achievers often come with the can do identity too. Over time, their identity becomes intrinsically linked to being the reliable fixer or expert, making it difficult to step back or delegate, or just say no. The phrase, "I'll just do it myself," is a common refrain of the high performer. Many of you have probably said it yourself at some point. Initially, it's born from efficiency, but ultimately, it turns into a form of self sabotage. The high performer becomes a bottleneck for teams' progress. Furthermore, by doing everything themselves, they prevent their teammates from developing new skills or taking ownership, hindering the team's overall capacity. The mental and emotional bandwidth consumed by handling routine tasks prevents the high performer from focusing on high impact strategic work that leverages their unique expertise. The relentless accumulation of tasks leads to chronic stress. The strong one eventually reaches a breaking point where their performance, rather than being exceptional, begins to suffer significantly due to exhaustion, not due to a lack of skill. This behavior tends to lead to isolation. By taking everything on, the individual inadvertently communicates a lack of trust in others, pushing away support and bearing the entire weight alone, ultimately accelerating burnout. Breaking free requires intentional effort to redefine roles and expectations. The first critical step is recognizing that competence is being leveraged to the point of diminishing returns. The primary job shifts from doing every task to leading the team to successfully complete tasks. We have to learn to delegate effectively, accepting that others may do the job differently and perhaps even make mistakes, as this is crucial for their growth. High performers need to establish and communicate clear boundaries regarding workload and availability, using their high value to negotiate realistic expectations. Because as high performers, there's not much people can come to us with that we can't do. It's just we can't do everything. I have this saying I like to use quite often with high performers, which is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And we got to keep that in mind with all these things that we're doing. Invest time in training and mentoring the team so that competence is distributed rather than centralized in one individual, so you can trust other people to do the work. By shifting from an individualistic, "I must do it all" mindset to a collaborative leadership approach, high performers can break the competence trap and achieve sustainable collective success. And we do need to lead through emotional exhaustion. So we have some tools for leading without letting irritability, numbness, or detachment take over. There are some daily habits for emotional regulation and focus that we're going to talk about. The first one being mindful pauses. You want to integrate short moments of mindfulness throughout the day. A few minutes of focused breathing can calm the stress response and help you stay centered amidst pressure. We also have morning and evening routines. Establish consistent routines that bookend your workday. A morning check-in, like asking "what am I feeling?" or a short gratitude practice. And an evening wind down, like journaling or deep breathing, helping to process emotions and create a mental transition away from work. Physical activity is big too. This is one of the biggest things for me personally. Regular, even moderate exercise increases endorphins and helps manage stress negative impacts. Short walks between meetings or a stretching routine can make a significant difference. And I know it sounds small, but try it out and see how it is incorporated into your routine. We also have to prioritize sleep. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep nightly, as consistent rest is essential for mental clarity and emotional resilience. And this also involves boundaries. So we have to define and protect boundaries. This is between our work and our personal life. That could be limiting after hours communications, like no emails after 7 p.m. That could be clearly communicating that the expectations to your team to model those healthy habits so that they understand the rules, the boundaries, and they can start implementing things themselves into their life. And then we got to build a support network. Leadership can be very isolating. A lot of high performers I talk to discuss how tough it is leading because they feel all alone in it. So seek help from a trusted inner circle. It could be peers, mentors, or a professional coach or therapist to gain perspective and process challenges in a confidential space. And again, this is what we do here at Premier Performance, and we'd love to help. to reach out to us and we can get started. And take real breaks and time off. Schedule regular short breaks during the workday and use your vacation time. Don't let it just pile up. Critically, practice detachment by completely unplugging from work mentally and digitally during this time to truly recharge. There's nothing like fully turning it off to actually let yourself recharge and see where you're at. And we can't get that turn off unless we completely unplug. There are also some cognitive and mindset tools. One is self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would a struggling colleague. We typically are so much kinder to everyone else than we are to ourselves. So acknowledge that it's normal to feel drained and respond to yourself with support rather than criticism. We can reframe challenges. Instead of viewing setbacks as insurmountable obstacles, reframe them as opportunities for growth or learning. This shifts your emotional state and frees up cognitive resources. And then reconnect with purpose. Regularly reflecting on your missions, values, and the positive impact of your work can keep us going. Focusing on this larger purpose can reignite motivation and provide clarity, acting as a powerful antidote to burnout. Sometimes we just got to remember why we're doing what we're doing. And identify triggers. Noticing patterns is a big aspect of this work. So increase self-awareness by identifying which situations, people, or times of day elevate your stress levels. Knowing your triggers allows you to plan ahead and manage your exposure or response effectively. At the end of the day, recognition is the first step. If you don't know something is happening, you can't do anything about it. So identifying those triggers is a very powerful thing. By implementing these tools, leaders can navigate emotional exhaustion with greater steadiness, ensuring they can continue to lead with both competence and compassion. Another aspect of this is the second shift of leadership stress. Leaders drain themselves by replaying conversations, pre-solving future problems, and constantly staying on even after work is done. They're running through what's going to happen next. This mental shift is characterized by a lack of psychological detachment from work, which is crucial for emotional recovery. One thing that we get caught up in is ruminating on the past. High achievers and leaders often replay difficult conversations or perceived mistakes in an endless loop. It can be an aspect of almost perfectionism. They're analyzing what went wrong or what they could have done differently, and this rumination keeps the stress response activated long after the event has passed. And ruminating on anything, honestly, as a therapist, it does not help us. It is not good for us. It makes a lot of things worse. There's a lot of times I'm telling my clients to stop thinking about these stresses, as hard as that may be. Turning our brain off and focusing on other things is very helpful. We also get into future problem solving, which is kind of just worrying. The mind races ahead to anticipate every potential future crisis. While proactive planning is a leadership strength, when done compulsively during personal time, it becomes anxiety-driven worrying that provides no actual resolution, and we just get stuck worrying. Constant vigilance, which is just being in on mode. There's an underlying feeling that one must always be prepared for the next issue. This constant vigilance prevents the nervous system from entering a state of rest and digest, leading to chronic stress and exhaustion. The second shift is a primary driver of burnout because the leader never truly recovers their energy. The inability to switch off leads to chronic fatigue, disrupted sleep patterns, anxiety, and a diminished quality of personal life and relationships. Impaired recovery. The brain needs periods of low demand activity to restore cognitive function. By engaging in the second shift, leaders rob themselves of this essential recovery time, which is critical for creativity, decision making, and resilience. What starts as an attempt to be a better leader ultimately backfires. The lack of rest means the leader returns to work the next day less effective, more irritable, and less capable of handling the actual demands of their job. So, let's talk about some strategies to end the second shift. Breaking this cycle requires conscious effort to create hard boundaries and practice psychological detachment. We can have rituals to clock out. This is where creating a deliberate end-of-day ritual to signal to your brain that work is over can be very helpful. This could be writing a to-do list for tomorrow to get the thoughts out of our head and try and turn off that rumination or just that racing mind. It could be changing clothes and washing your face, just getting into a relaxed mode. Could be a short walk or a shift in physical location. So, like if you're doing work at home, going somewhere else, or just getting outside and coming back and just resetting. We could also allocate worry time. Instead of worrying all evening, maybe we allow a specific 15-minute window early in the evening to think about those work problems. And then once the timer goes off, the topic is closed until the next workday. Most of life is about balance. We can't do all of these things all the time. Sometimes we have to just turn it off. We can also engage in activities that require our full attention and are completely unrelated to work. This is kind of mindfulness. That can be such as playing a musical instrument, it could be gardening, or it could be a complex physical activity. Using mindfulness techniques to catch yourself when you start ruminating or worrying can be very helpful as well to get us back on track. Gently guide your thoughts back to the present moment or your current activity, which is why doing things that require your full attention is so powerful. By actively clocking out mentally, leaders can protect their personal time, restore their capacity, and ultimately show up as more present, effective, and sustainable leaders. Overfunctioning, the silent leadership killer. Leaders do too much to compensate for others doing too little, and how to stop overfunctioning without performance dropping. Overfunctioning occurs when a leader steps in to perform a task that rightfully belongs to their subordinates. This behavior creates a dysfunctional cycle. From the leader's perspective, it's faster if I just do it myself, or if I want it done right, I have to do it. But from the team's perspective, the idea is the boss will handle it if we wait long enough. Or why try? The boss will just redo it anyways. And as I'm sure you guys can see, that can lead to some really toxic environments that isn't going to lead to success for the company or the team. The leader assumes responsibility for both their work and the gaps left by others, creating an artificial sense of stability while silently degrading their own capacity and their team's capability. There's a great book on all of this written by Jocko Willink, if anyone's ever heard of him. He's a great guy with a lot of great stuff out there. And he has a book called The Dichotomy of Leadership, which is all about how sometimes we have to delegate, sometimes we have to give things to other people, that we can't just do it all ourselves. And the reason he did it is because he wrote his first book, Extreme Ownership, about taking ownership of so many things and realized that he had to balance it out for people because people were taking it too far. They understood the idea, they just took it to a place that it wasn't working anymore. And remember, balance is key with anything that we do. And that's kind of the point of what he had to do himself. So how to stop overfunctioning without dropping the performance? Stopping this cycle is challenging but necessary. It requires strategic delegation, clear communication, and an acceptance of short-term discomfort for long-term gain. And this is one of the harder parts for most people, is we tend to choose short-term comfort over that long-term gain. So we have to go into the discomfort to reach what we want here. We have to shift from doer to developer as a leader. The fundamental shift is moving your focus from task completion to people development. You're no longer just trying to get stuff done, you're trying to create teams and create individuals and their abilities to handle the work so you can do more things managing from the top and less getting lost in the weeds. Your primary key performance indicator, or KPI, should be your team's ability to function independently and effectively, not the volume of individual tasks you yourself complete. Instead of constantly fixing mistakes, invest time in clearly training team members and setting clear expectations of what you want. The upfront time investment saves endless hours of rework later. And I know that upfront investment time is tough because we just want to do the work and there's not enough time in the day. But you're saving time later by putting it there. Delegation is the antidote to overfunctioning. It means handing over both the task and the authority. Assign ownership of projects and responsibilities very directly without vagueness. Ensure the team knows who is accountable for what. We have to know who owns what lane. This is often the place I start with most businesses I work with, or companies or teams, is who owns what lane and who is accountable for it, even if it overlaps with others, even if they have to trust others to do certain aspects of it. We need ownership. Empower your team to make decisions and even make mistakes. The work might not be at your gold standard immediately, but learning happens through trial and error. The goal is competence, not perfection. We also have to provide a safety net, not a crutch. Offer support and guidance when needed, but resist the urge to jump in and rescue them from consequences. We have to let people learn through that trial and error. And then establish and enforce boundaries. Overfunctioning often stems from poor boundaries. Reclaim your time and energy by setting firm limits. And then communicate those expectations. Be explicit about your capacity and what you will and will not handle. You can say something like, I will not be available after 6 p.m., or this project is entirely owned by Jane. Whatever you want to do. And then allow the consequences. This is the hardest part. When someone underfunctions, the consequence should land on their plate, within reason, not yours. If a deadline is missed due to a lack of effort from the owner needs to face the feedback, not the leader who worked all night to cover for them. We have to address underfunctioning directly. Overfunctioning only persists if underfunctioning is tolerated, because the overfunctioning is there to balance out the underfunctioning that is occurring. Communication definitely helps. Address performance gaps head on through direct constructive feedback. Help team members understand where they need to step up. If we try and talk to other people, this is called triangulation, where you bring in other people for issues, it tends to get worse. The best thing you can do is have that direct one-on-one conversation and just let people know what is happening. And hold people accountable. If a team member continues to underfunction despite training and feedback, you must follow a standard performance management process. So it's the same for everybody that you can run through, and it's a structure because it's less about figuring out what we're going to do here and you just run them through the system. Tolerating poor performance penalizes the high performers who have to then cover the gap, destroys morale, and ultimately ends up losing team members. By strategically withdrawing from tasks that aren't yours and empowering your team to rise to the occasion, you prevent self-sabotage and build a more resilient, capable, and sustainable organization. Now let's talk about when drive turns into self-abandonment. Ambition can push leaders to ignore red flags in their body and mind, and you can rebuild motivation without burning yourself down. When ambition drives leaders to achieve their goals, it can sometimes cross a critical line, evolving from healthy commitment into self-abandonment. This occurs when the relentless pursuit of success causes leaders to ignore crucial red flags in their body and mind, ultimately sacrificing their well-being for productivity. The psychology of self-abandonment in leadership. This phenomenon is fueled by an intense focus on external achievements and an internal narrative that views self-care as a weakness or a distraction. This happens a lot with the hustle culture narrative. Leaders absorb cultural messages that equate exhaustion with success. We see this all the time in movies and TV shows where people show themselves pushing to their absolute limit every single day. Pushing through pain is almost glorified, creating immense pressure to always appear strong and capable, even though that's not the reality. Performance identity. A leader's sense of self-worth often becomes tied exclusively to their professional output and achievements. A threat to performance feels like a threat to their entire identity, making it impossible to stop or rest, and it typically leads to nervous system reactions that cause issues. High performers often also suppress red flags. The body and mind send clear signals of distress in the form of chronic fatigue, anxiety, irritability, physical pain, or even cognitive fog. Self-abandonment involves overriding these signals with stimulants, willpower, or denial. So we can't suppress what our body's telling us. We have to listen to these signals. And we are actually going to dive deeper into all of this in a future episode to help you guys see these things coming before it hits you. Future orientation. Leaders often live in a future state, constantly chasing the next milestone. This focus on what's next means they are never fully present in their current physical and mental state, ignoring immediate needs. So now let's talk about rebuilding motivation without burning down. It is possible to maintain high levels of motivation and achieve ambitious goals while prioritizing your well-being. This requires a fundamental shift in how success is defined and pursued. First, redefine ambition as sustainable success. Shift your mindset from an all-or-nothing approach to one that prioritizes long-term viability. We have to keep things going long-term. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you try and sprint a marathon, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to go super well for me. View energy as a resource. Recognize that your physical and mental energy are finite resources that must be managed and replenished, not endlessly exploited. Prioritizing rest is not a lack of drive, it's smart resource management. Define success not just by revenue or output, but by the health of the team and the leader's sustained energy levels. Next, reconnect with your mind and body. You cannot respond to red flags you are ignoring. Develop self-awareness and listen to your body's signals. Practice embodiment. Engage in activities that bring awareness to your physical self. This could be yoga, a walk in nature, or a simple body scan meditation. Learn to identify and respect the feeling of genuine fatigue or rising anxiety. Schedule unscheduled time. Block time in your calendar for rest, reflection, or non-work activities. Treat this time as critical as you would a high-stakes board meeting. Check in regularly. Ask yourself daily, how am I feeling? What do I need right now to feel healthy and effective? These all help cultivate self-compassion, which helps get rid of self-criticism. We want to replace the harsh inner critic that demands endless work with a more supportive internal voice. This means we have to allow for imperfection. Accept that you are all human and we all have limits. We can only do so much. Making mistakes or needing rest is a normal part of the human experience. It's not a failure of character. There's nothing wrong with you for needing it. By shifting from a mindset of relentless pursuit to one of sustainable high performance, leaders can harness their ambition effectively, achieving great things while fully present, healthy, and whole. And this also goes with just getting support. And that's partly what we do here at Premier Performance is we support high achievers and leaders in these struggles because it is a very hard and lonely path to walk. And we have some really great tools that work, which is why we want to offer them to you guys. And that's why we put them out here with the Premier Mindset. Decision making when you're depleted. Cognitive fatigue affects intuition, clarity, and emotional composure, and you need to learn to reset it quickly because things will fall apart very fast if you don't. Cognitive fatigue impairs the brain's executive functions, leading to several predictable pitfalls, such as loss of clarity and focus, emotional reactivity, impaired intuition. The sheer mental energy required to make constant decisions leads to decision fatigue. Depleted leaders often take mental shortcuts, choosing the easiest option rather than the best one, or simply deferring decisions altogether. So when a major decision looms and you recognize signs of depletion, use these immediate strategies to reset your mental state. First is the 5-minute physiological sigh. It's a set of deep breaths, which is 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. This can rapidly calm the nervous system and clear a mental fog. So I'll do it for you guys so anyone watching the clip or watching it on YouTube will see it. But if you can just hear it, you'll kind of get a feel for what I'm doing too. So it looks like this. So we want to kind of do that for about 5 minutes and let that set in. If you have any pets, dogs, cats, those kind of things, you may have seen them do it on their own because it's something that all human beings, all mammals do to kind of relax the body, relax that nervous system. Changes of scenery or movement. Physical movement alters your neurochemistry. So step outside for just 10 minutes, walk around the office, or even just stand up and stretch. It makes a difference. Shifting your physical environment helps you shift your mental state. And then taking care of the body with hydration and fuel. Dehydration and low blood sugar significantly impact cognitive function. A glass of water and a healthy snack like nuts or fruit can provide an immediate boost to clarity. And the decide later rule. For non-urgent decisions, employ a hard rule. If you are exhausted, do not make a critical decision. Defer it into morning when your cognitive resources are restored, which means we need to get good sleep. And then long-term strategy. We need to make strategic decision management. Prioritize sleep, like I just talked about. The single most effective tool for optimal decision making is consistent quality sleep, and it's good for your health long term too. It's literally going to keep you alive longer. Batch minor decisions. Avoid wasting energy on minor choices throughout the day, like what to wear or what to eat. Save your cognitive bandwidth for the major strategic decisions. Delegate and trust your team. Empower your team to handle decisions within their scope. This gets things off your plate and protects your energy for the most critical choices only you can make. So give these things off to other people. You don't have to do it all yourself. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we got to trust others to do it with us. And then build reflection time. Schedule thinking time into your calendar to ensure you approach complex problems with a fresh mind rather than squeezing decisions into the end of a packed day. The role of nervous system regulation in leadership. Burnout is often dysregulated nervous systems, not a lack of discipline. Real strategies for leading from regulation instead of survival mode. These strategies help to manage the mental loop of stress and worry. First one being, name it to tame it. When you feel irritability or anxiety rising, pause and simply acknowledge the feeling, such as I'm feeling anxious right now, or this is stress. Name the emotion engages the prefrontal cortex and lessens the intensity of the emotional center, which is the amygdala. And I know it sounds silly just naming what you're feeling, changing how you feel about it, but it truly does work. You're activating aspects of the brain that aren't active right away, which helps this stuff get better. We have all the tools we need to manage stress and difficult things in our life. It's just, are we accessing them at the right time when we need it? And that's what these things do. There's also the power of co-regulation. Humans regulate through connection all of the time. So spend time with calm, trusted individuals. This could be peers, mentors, or coaches whose regulated presence helps soothe your own nervous system. Do not isolate yourself when stressed. That is not going to work out well. And then practice self-compassion. Instead of a harsh inner critic, when you feel depleted, respond with kindness. Acknowledging your humanity reduces the shame and stress associated with feeling weak. At the end of the day, as high performers, the work we do is hard. It just is. That's what this is. That's why so many people aren't at that level and they don't do these things. So we have to give ourselves that kindness to work through these things. And then psychological detachment rituals. We have to create firm boundaries between work and personal life to allow your nervous system to rest. These could be clock out rituals like we talked about earlier, or could be other things that you just build into your day. In summary, sustainable leadership isn't just about pushing through low energy or forcing yourself to stay strong for everyone else. It requires recognizing when you're drained, understanding the signals your mind and body are sending, and rebuilding your capacity before burnout takes over. High performers reach their true potential when they lead from regulation, not exhaustion. When they restore bandwidth instead of ignoring the signals that they're running on empty. So I want you guys to keep these things in mind, and I have a couple questions for you guys to think about and reflect on and answer, and kind of send me those answers so I can help holding you guys accountable and working you through those things, because I will give you guys tools to work on these things right away based on the answers you give me. So these 3 questions. First one, are you noticing the early signals that you're stretched too thin? Like irritability, brain fog, emotional numbness, or overreacting to small stressors? Are you seeing that? Are you noticing it? Second question, what responsibilities, people, or situations drain you the fastest? And are you carrying things that you were never told to hold, things that aren't yours? What things drain you, and what things are you carrying that you shouldn't be carrying? And then last question, when was the last time you intentionally restored yourself instead of just powering through? So often we just keep pushing because that's just what we know. But I want you to honestly ask yourself the last time you made time to just rest and recover. So give those some thought, answer those on your own, send me those answers so I can hold you guys accountable and give you some tools to start working on those things now. Because the way you answer these questions honestly gives me perspective of what's going on, and I can give you some pretty cool tools that you can use on your own, even if you don't want to fully work with Premier Performance altogether. But if you do, let us know. We'd love to get you set up and we can get things going too. Resilient minds, premier results. Recognition is the first step. So when we see things, when we understand things, we can change things. We've got to understand what we're dealing with and what is happening. And that's why we're doing this podcast, to spread awareness. So if you do find somebody that could benefit from hearing this episode, send it their way. Sharing these episodes with others is very helpful for us because we're trying to spread the word of these things and help people out. And it may change their lives if there's something that they're struggling with and they get an answer to it. So why not? It takes 5 seconds. And if they don't want to listen to it, they don't have to. It's no big deal. And if you benefited from it yourself, that is great. We'd love to hear that. and giving us reviews definitely helps out with us spreading this and getting it to more people as well. So if you can send us reviews and let us know how these things are going, that is great. We'd love to hear from you guys as well. So even if there's things we can improve, please let us know. We want to make things as best as possible for you all. I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life. So let me know if it's helping. I love staying connected with all of you. And you can reach out in a lot of different ways. You can email me at tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name spelled Mahler. You could text or call me directly at 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name, which is Premier_Performance_Reno for both of those. We have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name, which is Premier Performance LLC for both of those. And then we have the Twitter or the X account, which is at Premier Reno LLC. And finally, our website, which is www.premierperformancereno.com. So get involved, get into these communities, connect with us. If you have any questions or curiosities, let me know. We'd love to help. And we're going to keep on putting out new episodes. We drop content on all those social media sites every single day with new podcast episodes coming out every single week. Next week, we're going to talk about the break point, what it looks like getting to that break point and identifying that break point before we reach it so we can take charge and build ourselves back up instead of watching ourselves fall. So do what you can. Go out there, be the best version of yourself you can be. Make sure you get your rest. Make sure you push yourself, challenge yourself in some way, and don't be afraid to be great. Don't let fear rule your life. If there's anything you need, reach out and let me know. I want to be a resource for you guys. Otherwise, I will see you next week as we keep going with this stuff, and I hope you have a good one. Talk soon.